Hello, it's Richard Lucas of the Scottish Family Party here, and today I'm going to talk about Scottish Government waste. Now, I think there's lots of ways that the Scottish Government wastes money, and it runs at a deficit, as does the UK Government, and that's entirely uncontroversial in the political scene in Scotland, and yet it's saddling future generations with our debt, and eventually, if it's left unchecked, it will lead to financial crisis. So where's this money wasted? Where could savings be made? Well, I've looked at a few things on the Scottish Government website to see what's tucked away in the small print. Now, these are things that are not going to be sort of great front page scandal, but it's the accumulation of these small wastes that ends up with gross overspending by the government, and we would want to stop it. So what I'm going to look at in this video is the Climate Change Fund. Climate Change Fund. Now, if you look at the Climate Change Fund a few years ago, look at the sort of grants that were being made from it. I would say they look quite reasonable. If you're trying to reduce carbon emissions, they're spending money on the sort of things that probably you would think might reduce carbon emissions. Technological things. Let's look at a couple from a few years ago. Ore Valley Housing Association in Fife, Heat and Power Phase 1 to provide biomass fueled combined heat and power and other services to the local community. £344,000. Okay, another one. Castlemilk and Carmunnock Community Wild Park Trust, Glasgow, funding to ensure the continuation of a wind park development manager's post for development of a community wind park. £66,000. Now, okay, you might think that's a good use of money, you might not, but it's the Climate Change Fund, and they seem like ways that are going to change the way people are generating energy and making a significant difference. Look at the more recent ones, though. They're very different. Here's a few from the last couple of years. Robert Gordon University Students Association. A project to give a second chance to clothes, electricals, bikes and household items normally discarded and sent to landfill at the end of term. The project will include a series of workshops, swap shops and outreach sessions to build a culture of reuse that will have a positive impact for years to come. Workshops, swap shops, outreach sessions. How much did that cost? What's the bill for this? A couple of £1,000? £145,000 went to the Student Association. One of the results of that is that Student Association will be extremely grateful for that windfall, and I think that will influence their political views, their political allegiance going into the future. And also from the Scottish Government's point of view, that gets their message over. The climate change message is very much part of the Scottish Government's agenda, and they'll be promoting that to students through that grant. Let's look at another one. Food for Life is a project to provide the local community in Innerleith and Walkerburn and Traquair, they're very small places in the borders, with opportunities to grow their own lower carbon food and reduce food waste. New growing spaces will be developed, while training workshops will help people to develop the skills and experience to grow their own food and cook meals that use local seasonal produce with minimal waste. Okay, how much do you think we should spend on that one? £105,000. Part of it's to grow vegetables and to learn how to cook with them. Now, these are very small places. How many tons of carbon are going to be saved from released into the atmosphere by that scheme? Has anyone even begun to calculate? Does anyone really care? £105,000. Right, how about this one? Ballantyre Soccer Academy. Offer local children and families more sustainable and healthy travel opportunities to get about in Ballantyre. Project activities such as cycle training, assistance with bike maintenance and route planning will reduce local carbon emissions by helping families out of their cars and onto their bikes for local travel. Now, why is Ballantyre Soccer Academy interested in promoting cycling? Now, I think the reason is quite apparent. They got £80,000 for this project. Assistance with bike maintenance. If you want to maintain your bike, you find out how to do it on YouTube, or you do it yourself, or you go to a bike maintenance professional. Help with route planning. Do people really need a grant from the government to help them to find their way around on their bikes? Now, for Ballantyre Soccer Academy, were they really desperate to promote cycling? Or did they see this as a way of getting their hands on some cash, some taxpayers' cash? You have to suspect the latter. Okay, SPC Gardening Group will encourage the Springburn Parish Church community to take up gardening and grow their own fruit and vegetables in raised beds situated in the church grounds. Further activities to reduce local carbon emissions will include cookery classes to tackle food waste, I assume that's using leftovers, and a composting scheme. That sounds to me like a group of people at the church who've got a hobby in gardening and they want to have a little garden at the church and get everyone involved in it. Great. It's their hobby. £50,000 of taxpayers' money was given to them. Right, back to football. Ayr United Football Academy will reduce local carbon emissions through the Eco Player Interactive Challenge, EPIC. EPIC will see local sports get recycling centres established at 6 sports centres across South Ayrshire with a series of events to hand out and collect kit and provide further information on the benefits of recycling and what can be recycled. Right, sports kit recycling system, what you need for that? You're going to need some shelves, some plastic bins to put it in. Someone's going to have to drive around the sports centres in the car, taking it from one place to another. £71,000. Royal Tarlaire Golf Club will install a movable dividing partition in the main lounge area to save on heating and lighting and engage with local households to offer energy efficiency advice. Further project activities include the development of a car sharing scheme for sessions for local schools to increase awareness of carbon emissions. £34,000. Isn't it not obvious that this golf club wanted to get this building work done for nothing, and so they tacked on these other environmental goodies to it and they got it paid for? It's as if the people making these awards, they want to be conned by the people applying for them. Now that sort of spending, why don't the Conservatives criticise it? Well, what would happen if they did? Would they upset a few people? Maybe a couple of hundred people in the area? They might lose a bit of support. So these things go unchallenged. Right, that's the first section. A huge proportion of the awards made from the Climate Change Fund now go to things to do with ethnic minorities. Now, I wasn't aware of any data that suggests that people from ethnic minorities produce far more pollution, far more carbon into the atmosphere than anyone else, but a huge proportion of them are targeted at this population. Here's a few of them. El Mizan, which is a Muslim women's and children's centre. So their project will help the community to decrease their carbon emissions. The project will create additional community growing space, provide support for food waste reduction, and help the community switch to lower carbon transport methods through cycle training, route planning, and showcasing low emission vehicles. Now this charity, as far as I can see on the internet, is based in one large stone-built house in Glasgow. That's their operation. And the amount of money they've been given to reduce their carbon emissions among their community, £150,000, which is the absolute maximum grant that anyone can be given. £150,000 to reduce carbon emissions. Now, if they had a coal-fired power station in their back garden, I think, okay, maybe I can see how that could reduce carbon emissions. Okay, they're experts at it. El Mizan. Let's look at another year that they applied for it. A project to build on the willingness of 1,000 Muslim users that want to be supported to decrease their carbon emissions. £147,000, just below the absolute maximum that you can get. Now, this Muslim charity is run by Humza Yousaf's mother. Humza Yousaf is a Scottish government minister. They are obviously the masters at filling this application form in, because they got pretty well the top figure 2 years running. Let's look at some more. The Future is Bright, a project run by Glasgow Central Mosque to reduce local carbon emissions through installation of energy efficient measures such as LED lighting in the mosque. The project will also provide home energy efficiency advice and promote sustainable travel alternatives by setting up a car sharing initiative, providing cycle parking and working towards the installation of an electrical vehicle charging bay. £102,000. Now, the church I go to, they install bike racks. They've had big building projects. For one of them, I think it was about £100,000 that they wanted. They appeal for donations, and the people in the church pay for it. Now, I think here, this sounds to me just like a way of subsidising the mosque under the pretence of the climate change fund. £102,000 for LED lighting, etc. A car sharing scheme. That's just someone at the computer doing a bit of organisation for it. Anyway, let's go on. Al Bait Society in Glasgow. The project will also offer local households advice on home energy use and climate change in Arabic and English. £86,000. Eco Kids of Greener Glasgow is an initiative to inform, educate and develop greener behaviours amongst pupils and the wider community of Al Tawheed Arabic School. Project activities will include fuel-efficient driver training, cycle workshops and a walking club to reduce carbon emissions of the school run, while support will be available to help cut home energy use. £20,000. How is it that these Muslim organisations are so good at playing the system? Is this someone advising them of how to do it? I'm not sure, but they certainly are the experts at getting money out of this. Why are the parents of the children at Al Tawheed Arabic School particularly selected to receive training in fuel-efficient driver training? I'm not sure. Kirkcaldy Central Mosque and Community Centre will run Kirkcaldy Ethnic Minority Green Project, £83,000. Shia Asna Islamic Centre in Glasgow will install energy-efficient measures to save energy and decrease carbon emissions. Additional activities include advice and support for 500 members of the Shia Asna Islamic Centre community on home energy efficiency, fuel poverty and climate change. £135,000. Now again, I'm sure a substantial portion of that amounts to a grant to Islamic religious activity. Now I've heard people on the SNP boast that the SNP receives 80% of votes from Asians in Scotland, and I think the SNP invest heavily in these communities in order to secure that support. Yusuf Youth Initiative, members of local ethnic communities, £61,000. Scottish Afghan Society, £90,000 for reducing emissions. Climate Action, Resilience and Health, helping vulnerable ethnic minority women to reduce their carbon footprint by learning how growing and cooking local food, upcycling and composting helps tackle climate change and improve lives. £144,000. Now, if the government wants to spend money helping vulnerable ethnic minority women, I would suggest it does that openly and straightforwardly instead of diverting money to this cause through the climate change fund. It's just a way of pumping money into groups in a way that isn't open and transparent. Right, Africans for conservation. African and Caribbean minority communities, £130,000. Not to be confused with the African Carbon Reduction Scheme, £31,000. The Welcoming Association in Edinburgh to help migrant and refugee communities to reduce carbon emissions, £111,000. Now, if you're taking refugees and migrants, they're going to need some, particularly refugees, going to need some investment to help them on their way and set up their life in Scotland. But helping them to reduce carbon emissions, is that really what they're asking for? Is that their priority? £111,000. Nari Kalyan Shangho's Climate Change Initiative will deliver home energy audits to South Asian communities in Edinburgh, £67,000. Strengthening communities for race equality in Scotland. Help for members of the black and minority ethnic communities in West Edinburgh to reduce carbon emissions, £148,000. Edinburgh and Lothian's Regional Equality Council. Diverse ethnic minority communities in Edinburgh, £103,000. Chinese Climate Change Project will offer Glasgow's Chinese community advice, £67,000. Saelia's Growing Resilience Project will upskill and inspire black and minority ethnic women. It works within Glasgow to take personal action to reduce their carbon emissions, £73,000. Helping women. I mean, do women have higher carbon emissions than men? Is that why they're prioritised? Right, West of Scotland Regional Equality Council, working with minority ethnic communities and individuals, £132,000. So what we've got here is a government agency, the West of Scotland Regional Equality Council, Now, as a government agency, obviously they're the experts at applying for government funding. So that's what they've done. Now, I think the West of Scotland Regional Equality Council is probably a waste of money in the first place. So not only are spending money on that, but then they're claiming more money from other funds. And so it goes on. Aberdeen Multicultural Centre's Afro-Asian Community Energy Challenge Project, £99,000. Central Scotland Regional Equality Council project to help 120 households from ethnic minority communities across the Forth Valley to improve household energy efficiency and reduce carbon emissions, £111,000. That's nearly £1,000 per household if you're from an ethnic minority. If you're not, then you can forget that. So what's going on here? Looking at the big picture, the people who are making these awards, it seems apparent to me that they're perfectly happy to be conned. They're perfectly happy to go along with schemes that are obviously going to be grossly inefficient. They're not going to reduce the carbon footprint of anything or anyone by any substantial amount. It's window dressing. And it seems apparent to me that a large part of the motivation for this is to buy favour with different groups in the community. And I think that goes unchallenged in the Scottish Parliament. I think it promotes multiculturalism, which is the philosophy of the Scottish Government, and it promotes it by dealing with people as special identity groups rather than dealing with them as Scottish systems. Rather than having a system that applies to everyone, anyone can apply for, then it's targeted at particular groups. Now again, as I said, I think as there's groups set up, often government funded, to allegedly represent these different identity groups, then they become also specialists in applying for grants from the government, which just adds to the cost of it. The other factor we've got here is the government spending money to promote its message and to skew public debate. It's easy to get the impression that everyone's agreeing with the climate change agenda. Now, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it. The Scottish Family Party doesn't particularly have a policy on that at the moment. But the fact is that the government's using money to create the illusion that one organisation after another is really keen on the environmental agenda, whereas in actual fact, they're just after the cash and they're publishing a few leaflets and doing the relevant window dressing to promote the message that the government wants to be promoted. I think what this shows is if in Scotland, if you've got the right views, now by right views, I don't mean obviously right-wing views, I obviously don't mean correct views, I mean the views that fit with the government, the views that are approved of by the Scottish political establishment, in this case climate change. There's a huge amount of money sloshing around that if you play your cards right can come your way and sustain your venture. Now the Climate Change Fund is currently £10 million a year, and from what I've seen of where it goes to, I think you could cut the lot. I think it's entirely wasted. Now the Climate Change Fund, the things I've gone through here, that's the tip of the iceberg of the Scottish Government's programmes of buying favour and promoting their ideology with taxpayers' money. So I'll look at a few others another time. Right, thanks for watching. Goodbye.